U.S. sends 4 F-16 fighters to help Manila over the threat of China fishing boat in the South China Sea. U.S. sends 4 F-16 fighters to help Manila over the threat of China fishing boat in the South China Sea. On Monday, 4 heavily armed U.S. Air Force F-16 fighters from Misawa Air Base in northern Japan flew many hundreds of miles to the South China Sea south of Taiwan and buzzed the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt. The impressive sortie was part of a powerful American response to China's month-long maritime occupation of a resource-rich reef inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. American and Philippine ships and planes surged into the South China Sea as a warning to the roughly 220 Chinese militia boats anchored off Whitson Reef 200 miles west of the Philippines. The U.S. State Department made it clear the use of force was on the table. Beijing blinked and withdrew its boats. China realized that its continued presence was simply going to strengthen the resistance, said Jerry Hendricks, a retired U.S. Navy officer and author of To Provide and Maintain a Navy. But the American deployments belied the fragility of U.S. air power in the Western Pacific. The 4 F-16s, each packing 6 air-to-air missiles, were a credible aerial force. But those fighters' home base is really far away from Taiwan and the South China Sea. It's possible the F-16 staged from the Kadena Air Base in Japan's Okinawa Prefecture, just 500 miles from the southern tip of Taiwan. It's also possible the F-16s flew the entire 1,800 miles from Misawa to the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. In any event, dragging those 4 fighters to the South China Sea's hot zone required 4 Air Force KC-135 tankers, each of which had its radio transponder on and thus was visible on public plane tracking websites. 1 tanker per fighter. After all, an armed F-16 normally can fly no farther than 400 miles without mid-air refueling. Leaving aside the 2 squadrons of F-15s with the 18th Wing at Kadena, the 2 F-16 units belonging to the 35th Fighter Wing at Misawa are some of the closest USAF forces to Taiwan and the South China Sea. If the 13th and 14th Fighter Squadrons need a tanker per F-16 to play any meaningful role in fighting around Taiwan, imagine how many tankers a much larger American force would require.